Jay Slater's cause of death has been confirmed as his devastated family send out a special request to their loved ones ahead of his funeral.
The mystery of Jay Slater has finally been solved.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. After 19-year-old Jay Slater's body was repatriated back on home soil, the family rushed to get a second opinion from the far better and more expert local coroners of Jay Slater's cause of death. And of course, whatever the Spanish people said, whatever the experts said in Tenerife, that is of no consequence. What matters is what the British experts said. That is now made, whatever the result is, official. Now, interestingly, this is a repeat, a precise repeat of what happened in the Nora Corrin case. The silly Malaysian authorities apparently had no idea either what they were talking about, so a second autopsy was undertaken, obviously in Britain, and in that case it seems family members were also hoping for an outcome besides an accident. So what did the British authorities determine happened to Jay Slater? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. If you appreciate the level of analysis on this channel, you can also hit the thanks button, especially if you haven't already. And let's get started. Okay, so what did the British authorities determine happened to Jay Slater?
Over a month after the teenager went missing on holiday in Tenerife, his autopsy has been completed, with injuries including several broken bones. The result points to the cause of death being a fall or plunge from a height.
Wow, who knew? But it seems like there's absolutely no second guessing that assessment since it's from British doctors.
The teen's body was flown back to the UK last week. A post-mortem in the UK confirmed that Jay died because of traumatic head injuries consistent with a fall from height.
I love the way both of these medias basically saying, well, it is official now, only at this point now, basically the 4th of August, is it official that what happened to Jay was that he died from an accident. For some of us, it was official weeks ago. According to The Sun, quote, a post-mortem in the UK confirmed that Jay died because of traumatic head injuries consistent with a fall from height. Now, I'm going through my notes and I'm trying to look at the report from the Spanish coroner in Tenerife, and I'm struggling to find how this assessment is any different from theirs. Now, according to The Sun, quote, the Spanish police found his body in a deep ravine in the mountains of northern Tenerife. Now, so his body was found in a deep ravine under kind of a cliff face. So how did he die? If he didn't die from falling, how could he have died? And so they say in the Sun article, after he slipped while trying to make his way back to his hotel, the coroner's report said his death would have been instant. It's quite strange, isn't it? A British publication that's been trumpeting the foul play scenario for weeks, almost 4 weeks straight, day after day. Now it's citing a British source saying the same thing the dubious, inept, non-committed investigators from Tenerife were saying all along. And incredibly, not a mea culpa in sight. No acknowledgement for articles like these. Grim next steps. Jay Slater cop should probe if he's been murdered and keep open mind. Brit ex-cop says after Spanish ditch search. 1st of July 2024. Remember that. Should the cops still have kept an open mind on July 1st, almost 2 weeks after Jay disappeared? It's true, there is a time and place for keeping an open mind, and it's usually in the few hours and first few days after an incident. Hopefully the difference between an average investigator, a good investigator, and a great investigator is the speed at which they are able to narrow that open mind based on logical, sensible, realistic evidence anchored in the facts of the case, and bring the all-important focus, that laser-guided precision thinking needed to get the right result. Did we see that here? Or did we only, when the British autopsy was conducted, do we only accept then what has been obvious really all along? Or do we still not accept it? I would say the vast majority of people talking about this case and thinking about this case went completely off track and got lost in the minutiae. That is the power of intertextuality, being able to think systematically, logically, and rationally based on a keen, detailed knowledge of the fabric of a certain kind of case profile compared to another case. It's being able to tell the difference between crime and something that doesn't involve crime whatsoever. It may seem as if many people are able to process information in a common sense way, but I think this case proves, shows, demonstrates, illustrates just how uncommon common sense actually is, especially in true crime. Some may think knowing this wasn't foul play early on was a fluke. It's not. It's based on a higher level of investigative skill. Then there was another article in The Sun dated 9 July 2024, Hopes for Jay. Jay Slater isn't missing, feared dead, police source reveals as lines of inquiry keep search hopes alive. Now this is known as the Madeleine McCann golden standard for how to treat missing persons cases. And this is how this rule works. The longer someone is missing, the more likely it is that they're still safe and still alive. Then there's also Jay sighting probe. Jay Slater's family searched town in Tenerife where teen was seen on CCTV, despite mayor insisting he wasn't here. That's from the 9th of July 2024. So even though the mayor of that town was saying that wasn't him, they still went there anyway, because I guess they knew better. And this article actually refers to Jay's father begging British police and Interpol to get involved in the search. The reality when it comes to missing person searches in natural terrain is that patience is a virtue, and that searches need to be conducted with care, precision, and with skill. Obviously, social media hysteria does a great deal to interrupt the level of focus required for searches of this nature. Social media basically serves as a cacophony of distraction. Incidentally, this article also takes a leaf out of the Madeleine McCann golden standard for how to find someone missing. Leave the area and go as far away as possible in search of dubious, bogus sightings. Then there's also this article from the 28th of June 2024, Where is Jay? Death threats, disappearing duo, and 10 other clues that could unlock the Jay Slater mystery 13 days after he disappeared. Now let's have a look at the 10 clues the Sun highlighted. Well, more than half have proved to be completely without merit. These are some of them. Jay's checkered past. How relevant was that to him falling down a ravine? Completely irrelevant. Drug links to the rave, also completely irrelevant. A grainy image taken at Santiago del Teide, clearly wasn't Jay, completely irrelevant. Reports that Jay was spotted watching the Euros, also unfounded. The Sun also suggested comparing the family to criminal Karen Matthews, suggested that that was unfair, but then why bring it up to begin with? The Sun also seemed to think possible activity on Jay's Instagram after his disappearance was worth highlighting. Was it? No, it wasn't. GoFundMe scammers also had nothing to do with finding Jay or why he disappeared. In any event, that's 4 articles. I'm not going to go through from any other publications. I think that's enough. I don't have time to kind of go through all of the archive of really disinformation from actually the mainstream media that were pontificating falsely on this particular case. I barely scratched the surface on the Sun's coverage, or really the coverage of half a dozen other media that covered this case consistently. In my view, based on the sum of all the coverage that I saw, all of it was skewed. All of it was leaning towards the popular but incorrect foul play hypothesis. All the pundits that I saw, except for those on ITV, said basically the same thing, and all of them were wrong. Do they hold themselves responsible or accountable for this? Does anyone? And because they don't, and because you don't, many of you don't, there's every incentive when you are faced with the next uncertain situation to go down the path of least psychological resistance all over again, just as has just happened in the Southport incident, where the temptation is simply too great to simply believe whatever people want to believe. And in that case, people wanted to believe that the foul play that occurred was as foul, as shocking, as anti-British as it could possibly be. Was it? The same mobs peddling disinformation in this case are doing the same in that one, to the harm of literally everyone. What is missing in all of this? Critical thinking, rational thinking, intelligent thinking, original thinking. Wanting to believe certain things is human, but it's also a road to ruin. Wanting to believe things rather than letting reality speak for itself. Now, according to an article in The Times, quote, Jay Slater, the British teenager who was missing in Tenerife, died of traumatic head injuries, his family have said. A post-mortem examination was carried out in Britain last week after his body was repatriated from the Spanish island. Coroners found that Slater's injuries were consistent with a fall from a height. His death would have been instantaneous. So once again, you see someone in like a mountainous area. They're lying at the bottom of a steep cliff. They've got blunt force trauma injuries and they're in an area that's extremely difficult to get to. What else are you going to imagine happened to this person? Now, let me ask you, why do you think the family felt confident enough to do a second autopsy? A second autopsy. Do you mind if I make a suggestion? Because the shitstorm on social media, this whole circus of nonsense going on in the background, almost had them convinced that the local police, well, I think did have them convinced that the local police were completely inept, totally incompetent, and that their precious son was very likely murdered, was very likely the victim of foul play. Well, neither were true. And all social media achieved for them, for Jay's poor family, was to prolong their uncertainty and aggravate their suffering. If you're still listening to this, and I'm sure many people have tuned out long ago because they don't want to hear this, it's one of the things with critical thinking. You are able to deal with errors in your own thinking. People who aren't critical thinkers can't do that. So if you're listening this far, well done. But if you are one of those foul play fanatics, you were part of that, aggravating the suffering of the family, prolonging their uncertainty unnecessarily. And now that a British coroner has confirmed what ought to have been known for weeks, who is to blame for getting this wrong so badly? Who is to blame for jeering, mocking, and criticizing the Spanish, who were on the right track all along? And I wonder, do you think anyone is going to apologize to the Spanish? Somehow I doubt it. Again, where did this culture come from of criticizing foreign law enforcement almost like it's second nature? Where does that default setting come from? If I look back at the Madeleine McCann Golden Rule Book for successfully finding missing people, what's the rule of thumb when it comes to law enforcement? What should you do? Should you kick the lead detective off the case, sue him, and spend the rest of your time undermining the local Portuguese investigation while singing the praises of your own far superior investigators, but ultimately equally unsuccessful counterparts? Tell me, has that proved to be successful in the past, that strategy? So why are people still using that rule book now? Will folks learn from the lessons and mistakes made in this case? I would say that certainly based on human nature that we've seen so far and just human nature the way it is, the answer is no. And as someone in the true crime community, that makes me angry because it's not operating very intelligently. It's not learning from our mistakes. It's being pig-headed and arrogant and stubborn and prideful. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. It doesn't, if we are trying to find what really happened to the victims in these cases, if we're trying to find the authentic narrative, you can see just how the odds are stacked against us, because by far the majority are going to think in the most reptilian way possible. And just look how outgunned we are. You've got 90% of the media getting it wrong. You've got 99% of social media getting it wrong. You've got the people in the comments following all of this mindlessly getting it wrong as well. We're completely outgunned. So I do want to say to every person who has thought critically about this case, you are a very valuable asset to this channel, but also to your various communities. And all I can say is keep fighting the good fight, the fight for truth, the true, authentic fight for, for reality to be known. Because it seems like people just are purveyors of fiction and preferers of fiction. And isn't that sad? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.